Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the meeting. The first item of business is election of chair for 25-26. Is there a nomination, please? Caroline?
I'd like to nominate Catherine Glover, please.
Is there a seconder for that, please?
I'd like to second that.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Over to you, Catherine.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, next thing is to appoint a vice chair. Have I got any nominations? Thank you, Caroline.
I'd like to nominate Beth Rowland.
Yeah, okay. Are there any seconders? Chetna, thank you. Yes, Beth's unable to be here today, and I think Chris is substituting for her. Okay, so no other nominations? Okay, I think that's decided. Do we have any apologies for absence?
So, Melanie de Jong and Beth Rowland and Chris Cook is here as a substitute chair.
Thank you. Okay, minutes of previous meeting. Do we have any comments on page 5? Those of you who were here, not everybody was. Page 5, page 6, page 7. I did notice that it says National History Museum instead of Natural History Museum. Easy mistake to make. Page 8. Did you put your hand up? Sorry? I thought you put your hand up. No. And page 9. Okay, everybody happy with the minutes then? Show of hands. Okay, thank you. I think that you weren't here, so you don't have to vote. Right, okay. Agenda item 9, Climate Emergency Action Plan 6 Progress Report.
Just before that, we have a public question.
I just turned over the page, that's my problem.
We have a public question,
Yeah,
but I don't think the questioner is here or online, Chair.
Yeah, we weren't sure whether he was going to appear. So I'm going to read his question out. It's a public question from Mike Billsborough. And the question is, well, the background is, based around my passion around the environment and knowledge of reducing home energy consumption and bills, I've recently started a little firm as a semi-retirement plan, carrying out home energy assessments where I visit a property and spend 2 to 3 hours working through it with the owner, educating them and helping to identify issues and make suggestions. It's then followed up with a 15-page report specific to them. In the short time I've been doing this, I've been shocked at how inefficient people's homes are. And by the way, these are mostly three-plus bedroom desirable properties from comfortably off owners. In doing further research, I found the Wokingham Climate Emergency Plan and was equally shocked to see that Wokingham's plan around this item, 75% of homes being EPC-C, is dated to be around 2027-28. Not clear to me if this is start or completion. And marked as green, even though it shows that the CO2 impact from this would be far greater than many other items which have been started. So, my question is, given the huge amount of CO2 associated with this item, why are we not starting this in April 2026, or now preferably, and get funding from the Warm Homes Plan just announced in the spending review? So, we've got an answer. It looks like the action referenced in your question is action 3.4.2 from the 5th Progress Report 2024, given the timescales shared on it. Action 3.4.2, develop and deliver schemes to support retrofitting of homes from the 5th Progress Report is rated as green RAG status due to it being associated with specific schemes such as the Local Authority Delivery, LAD, grants. The green status for this action does not reflect the overall target of increasing the EPCs of households across the borough. The 2027-28 date next to this action, 3.4.2, represents the estimated completion date, not the start date. In the latest Climate Emergency Action Plan, the RAG status is given next to overall targets alongside, where possible, key metrics. This should make it clearer on where we are with our overall targets. Retrofitting domestic homes is recognised as a key area to meet Wokingham's 2030 target. It is the second biggest priority area within our Climate Emergency Action Plan after transport, and there has been a target and associated actions in our plan since the first iteration back in 2020. Wokingham Borough Council was successful in receiving funding from the government's Warm Homes Social Housing Fund and the Warm Homes Local Grant Fund. This funding will support Wokingham residents living in properties that have an energy performance certificate rating of D or below for both privately owned homes and social homes. We will continue to seek and apply for funding to support retrofit actions within our Climate Emergency Action Plan. In addition to seeking funding, we recognise the influencing role the Council has in this area. As a result, we share retrofit information, case studies and external websites throughout the year on our Climate Emergency Hub and via our Council newsletters to encourage and inspire residents to take action. The retrofitting targets and actions will be looked at in detail at the Climate Emergency Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting in January 2026. So, now we can go out. There's no Town and Parish Council questions and no member questions. Okay, so now we can get on to item 9, WBC Climate Emergency Action Plan, 6th update 2025. Over to you, Katrina.
Thank you. I'll very briefly introduce the report before handing over to Mary and the team. So, firstly, I think I'd like to thank the officers for preparing what is a very, as ever, detailed and long report. I'm sure you all enjoyed reading it. And also to highlight, we've had some, whilst challenges remain, we've had some external validation of the progress being made. So in particular, the Council Climate Action scorecards were released about a few weeks ago and highlighted Wokingham as one of, in fact, I think the most improved single-tier authority in the country. So against a backdrop of pretty limited progress nationally, many of the challenges are shared across other councils, but I think in particular we saw huge advances in the scoring for us on buildings and on planning, so the local plan update in particular playing a key role there. We know there's a challenge to us achieving our ambitions. It feels somewhat appropriate to be having this meeting looking at our climate emergency action plan during a heat wave which feels like it's gone on for quite a long time. I think, we heard from Professor Chris Merchant a few months ago around the science of this, and sadly 1.5 degrees and the target, that temperature target in the Paris Agreement, does seem to be in the rearview mirror now, or we're fast approaching it. So the urgency is absolutely here. We're committed to doing what we can, but I think the other thing that the update does highlight is there are challenges. There are challenges to what we have the resources to deliver, and there are challenges to what the council has control over. So I think we want to and will continue to partner with the organisations in and around our borough to deliver on this, and also promote actions that everyone can take, share best practice, but also what I've been really encouraged to see is the way that climate emergency has been increasingly embedded throughout the council, so that where we are, in every area where we're taking action, it's coming ever higher to the forefront. So that I'd like to hand over to the team.
Thanks, Katrin. So yeah, as mentioned tonight, the 6th progress report has been shared with the Climate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and in that report you'll see there has been some significant changes in the format of the plan. These changes have been previously presented to this committee, and thank you all for your comments over the year that have been that have fed into the updates alongside the feedback we've received from residents and colleagues. In addition to the format changes, you'll see updates to the actions against the current status and where relevant new actions have been included. Last year, when the 5th progress report was brought to this committee, it was shortly after the new government came in, and I shared some manifesto commitments that could potentially support Wokenham's carbon neutral target and some of its actions. So I just wanted to share a brief update on 2 of those, where we have seen some progress. So the Warm Homes Plan, we've seen the government commit 13.2 billion to upgrade homes and reduce energy bills over the next 5 years. This includes support for heat pump uptake, social housing retrofit and lower income household retrofit, and Wokingham has secured funding for both the Warm Homes Local Grant and the Warm Homes Social Housing Fund. Another key area to make you aware of is the Clean Power 2030 Action Plan. So the government has adopted this plan, and there's 2 key targets in that: to have clean sources produce at least 95% of Great Britain's generation by 2030, and also clean sources produce at least as much power as Great Britain consumes. So just to provide a bit of national context and build on some of those commitments that I shared last year, because I think there could be influence on the Wokenham's Climate Emergency Action Plan. So tonight, just to make you aware of the officers that we've got. So Sarah Morgan is in the room, so Service Director of Commercial Property. Online, we've got Rob Curtis, who's Senior Specialist Transport Planning. Michelle Crick, who's the Waste Contract Manager. Una and James from the Planning Policy Team. We've got Andy Glencross, Head of Environmental Services, and Claire Priest, Head of Procurement and Contracts. And we have Andrew from the Climate Team, and we have Narinda, who is the Service Director that covers climate emergency now. So hopefully we've got quite a few officers here tonight, so we should be hopefully be able to answer most of your questions. If there are questions that we need other officers to answer, we can take that away and come back to you after this meeting. So really open it up to questions. Pass over to Catherine, I think.
Thank you very much, Catherine and Mary. Okay, so I don't know what the best way of doing this is. Just go through it from the beginning, from section by section, I guess. I mean, there are several parts to this, that the strategy has been abstracted out and is now after the plan. There's also a very nice section with the with some facts and figures. Right at the end. Caroline.
I was going to start on transport, as you suggested, and on page 26, you've got 1B, reduce road freight not started. When is that likely to start?
Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hope I'm coming through. Good, excellent. Yeah, so it's on our plan to start that hopefully this autumn. We've had our local transport plan adopted in March this year, so we're ready to go. We've just got some staffing issues essentially, so assuming we're able to recruit, we'll be able to get going in the autumn with a freight strategy, which will outline what our plan is basically.
Thank you.
Rob, oh sorry, I was just wondering if you'd there's been a big change in terms of how the transport section in particular is looked at. I wondered, whilst we had Rob, whether that there'd be interest in sort of just briefly highlighting that change, Rob. And I know Adrian also would have liked to be here, Adrian Betteridge, but he's very keen to ensure that the committee's aware that the targets in particular, in terms of mileage share, this is the first time that they're done in this way. So it's a learning iterative document for all of us and might be looked at in the future. I mean, Chair Committee, I don't know if that would be helpful in consideration of the transport section. Sure, I don't know, Andrew or Rob, if you wanted to, how you wanted to do it in terms of methodology, or obviously the more transport details.
Yeah, so I'll try and go first, and hopefully Andrew can tell us about how he's currently gathering the data. But as I mentioned, the local transport plan, which is the LTP, was adopted in March. It's deliberately quite a high-level document, so it has some. There's an action plan in there, but we're yet to actually assign targets and give ourselves some timescales. So that's one of the next stages when we start developing our future plans. So we need to make sure these all align with the targets and the savings that are in the climate emergency action plan. Obviously, we've been trying to develop the two together. What we've done in terms of the way this is laid out now, we've got our total carbon savings across each of the areas rather than attributing it to individual lines. Because I think we'd picked up before that we were potentially double counting, where an increase in cycle travel is also a decrease in vehicle mileage, and so trying to get one against the other, attribute the tons of CO2 to each one was pretty much impossible. So we're mainly looking at the headline savings now. I don't know if you want to talk about the actual figures themselves, Andrew.
Hi, Rob, thanks. Yeah, so as you mentioned, the change to the mileage share was primarily due to those kind of discussions and kind of feedback from groups such as this about ensuring the accuracy and a little bit of a move towards mileage share rather than purely diesel and petrol vehicles as the only focus. As you say, we want to ensure we're incorporating walking and cycling mileage in that. So the way we did that was, without going into too much detail, we're now using the mileage share statistics, which are national. So they're not, unfortunately, specific to Woking and Borough because we don't have access to that level of data. Well, so it doesn't exist. So we're using that, and then in the whole calculation process to estimate the carbon savings based on a percentage. For example, we're still following quite closely the 50% of for petrol and diesel vehicles. So it's around, you can currently now see the current mileage share figures and what we're aiming to get to. So we're still aiming to get to down to 50%. So that's where a lot of the savings are from. And you can see that from things like the EV share. So again, without going into too much detail, we hope that process has improved the accuracy, and it allows us to align more closely to things like we have access to some local data for mileage share, which seems to align with the national statistics, and it also allows us to be a bit more flexible in those kind of areas to try and be ambitious.
If I just add to that before you ask more questions. So when you mentioned that was national data, we are collecting some data at a local level. We've got some kind of camera-based sensors that tell us what the traffic makeup is on some of our roads. As part of that LTP monitoring process, we're aiming to develop that further. So we'll be able to supplement that more with some of the national data to make sure that we are on the right track, and we're not just assuming what's happening nationally is happening in Woking. So we are kind of bringing in that more local check as things move forward, I think. Is that fair to say, Andrew?
Yeah. Obviously, as we get more data, it's always better.
So, and just to add, so I think really, and maybe summarise, it's that the shift to mileage share is that kind of first step, and we will continue, as we do every year, to kind of look at those targets and make sure they are the best kind of targets based on available data. So as more data becomes available, we will look to refine those targets and make sure they're the right level of ambitious, but also achievable.
I think you had your hand up, and then, so it's Peter, then Moses, then Chris.
Thank you, Chair. I guess the first is more of an observation on page, well, I'll do page 6 of the report, page 20 of the agenda. In terms of on-street parking, on-street charging, I should say, where it says 44 sockets have been installed, compared to 12,000 households without off-street parking, and our target of 30% of electric vehicles, sorry, 30% of vehicles to be electric. So if you took that 30% over those 12,000 households, you'd be looking at 4,000 vehicles without off-street parking, which would clearly need some other form of generation or charging. So I think the 44 figure just shows what a hill we've got to climb in terms of providing those facilities over the next few years. So that's an observation. The next question is about LTP4, because my understanding is that the new government are changing the funding mechanism for active travel, so Active Travel England. So although we might have designs and plans for active travel, such as cycleways, etc., when we come to actually get funding for implementation of those schemes, the pot is getting smaller and may not even be there when we get there. So I would look at anything under LTP4 to be at least amber, not green. I mean, you can put a plan together, but if you don't have committed funding to deliver it, there's, you know, that's at risk.
I think just on the, so from the plan perspective, the we've put it as green because that is about the plan, so that's been adopted. We do plan lots of plans. We do plan to extract some of the kind of key projects within the LTP4 in future iterations to draw out. So then I think you'd see where to give more indication of where the specific projects are at. So recognise it. So that green is because of that. It's related to the action where it's about developing, but not about the delivery.
Yep. Thanks, Mary. If I carry on from there, so that's a really good point. The LTP itself is obviously written, so it's green because it's done, but a lot of those kind of supporting documents of the LTP, which include the bus service improvement plan and the LC WIP, which is the local cycling walking infrastructure plan, they're already in the CAP, so a lot of them are already included in the document. When it comes to funding, you're absolutely right. The Active Travel England Fund is potentially going to be trailing away in future years. But to compensate for that, they've increased our local transport grant. So over the next few years, that's gradually going to be increasing each year. We haven't actually been given the specific details of what that grant, what the rules are around that grant. But effectively, as we understand it, it's for any local transport. So it'll be down to the borough to decide how much of that gets allocated to, say, green infrastructure and cycling and walking, and how much of it goes to other elements of transport, such as road safety or public transport, that kind of thing. So I think the actual amount of money is potentially even going up slightly. But what we spend it on isn't as specified as it had been in the past. So active travel will be competing with all those other modes rather than being specifically allocated a lump sum. And if I go back to the charge point question, so there are 44 additional charge points on the Orcs project. So to say now our total figure, so I've scrolled away from it. We do have a total of, is it somewhere around 300? And say charge points currently out in the kind of public domain. We've just agreed a new contract with some new funding from the local electric vehicle infrastructure fund, which is going to give us another 200 plus sockets, including some rapid charge points, which are going to be potentially more convenient for some people because you can go along, charge up quite quickly. And the remainder will be out on the street, same as these other sockets. So there will be more coming. Our EV charging strategy, which is obviously the row above, specifies how many we need to try and deliver by 2030. And we're still trying to aim for the figures that are in that document. It is again going to be the question of funding when we get towards 2930 to see if we can actually reach that target. And we're also looking at other alternative options for how you can charge from home. So we do know that some people trail cables across the pavement going from their house out to the road where they've parked. That's a big no-no in highways because there's risk of electric shock for various reasons. Even if two people charging their cars next to each other, you can cause an electric shock. It's not necessarily about the cable itself breaking or anything like that. So that's something that we need to start looking at enforcing more stringently. But if we're going to do that, we want to be able to provide our residents with an alternative. There are cable gullies that companies are developing and some potential other options that will help you be able to supply your car with energy from your home without having to trail a cable over the pavement. But they're still in quite early development. So we're kind of tracking the progress of those and then working out what we can do as a borough going forwards. I think that covers both things.
Chair, can I just come back? I admire Robert's optimism in terms of funding, but we know that the government is up against it in terms of money. And I'd be surprised if the money we get through the increase in our highways budget matches the money we're not going to get from the Active Travel England budget. But I wait to be proved wrong, Robert.
No, you're probably right. Fingers crossed. I should have mentioned we are, of course, working with developers where there are new sites coming forwards, not only for them to provide active travel infrastructure on their new developments, because that's going to be the biggest opportunity really is new developers, new residents coming in. We want to get those people walking and cycling before they get into those habits of jumping in the car and driving to their shops and making short journeys by car when ideally they shouldn't be. But we're also trying to get them to fund some of our kind of off the development improvements as well, which are already in the LCWIP. So we're seeing that as another potential source of funding, provided it will help that development, remain sustainable in terms of reducing the amount of cars that they have as their new residents move in.
I just wanted to pick up on this as well because we've had some questions about council houses, HRA, well, putting EV chargers on HRA land. I've been asked about that from people who haven't got road access, and I've also been asked about putting EV chargers on a council house. So that's two different things. So have we got anything about that?
Yeah, so we do have a policy for our social houses that if, those that have a driveway are able to install an electric charge point on the driveway if they've got a drop curve. There is the same issues, those that don't have a driveway, as Rob was talking about, that there are solutions out there and we are looking at solutions to that broader, which I think will kind of follow from that borough-wide solution to what do we do with those houses that don't have driveways. If they want an electric vehicle, what is that solution? And that kind of encompasses the social houses as well as private residents as well. So hopefully we will get a solution. We are looking to see what other authorities are doing, specifically with social houses, but broader as well. So we'll have a look and hopefully there'll be a solution to it in the future.
Okay, thanks. Peter, have you got any more?
I have further
About transport?
No, not about transport.
Okay, Moses.
Thanks, Chair. My question is a bit it's generic. I wanted to know, because we have a new report format now. So what's the relation between the RAG rating and the stage criteria definition?
So the RAG status now is against that target, and that's something that we, when we took the when we've taken priority areas to this group, it felt like that's one of the things that came out of this group, that actually there was a want to put the RAG against the target. So where we've got more metrics. So within that, how we get to that target, that's what all the actions are beneath that target. So that project stage, there is some information at the top of the report on what that kind of means. We recognise it's kind of an indication of where each action is at, but hopefully that's enough to kind of give that flavour on where the actions are. So the project stage reflects where the action is, and then the RAG reflects what the overall target is. Does that answer your question?
Not quite. Are you saying the RAG rating is absolute number as a function of where we are at now, and the stage criteria feed into that? So if we have, say, everything at initiation idea, the RAG rating is likely to be amber or red. So if I look at page 20, for example, so I see green there. So how do they relate to the delivering and the initiation? Page 20, sorry. EV vehicle mileage. And those carbon savings, are they like cumulative numbers or on the spot numbers?
So I looked at Andrew.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just finding it on the report. So in terms of the EV strategy, yeah, so again, as Mary says, the RAG ratings are for like the overall, for the figures, to try and give a bit more representation. So again, things like the retrofit actions, because it was mentioned in previous reports that we were the RAG ratings were slightly different to, like there weren't the figures there while we were expecting them to be green. That wasn't quite as clear. So hopefully by attaching the kind of the more data focus that the council is moving towards in general, that's kind of give a bit more perspective for people such as yourselves and residents reading the report. For the instance there about the EV strategy, about the EV mileage, those carbon savings are, yes, for the whole, that 30% mileage share, whereas we're currently at 4.3%. So those are for the whole of the EV actions beneath it. Where we have the data available for specific actions, which isn't always possible because some of them are quite small or quite niche, but we will put the data there. So they don't always add up exactly to the mileage share target, because we acknowledge that we might need to do more in those areas, and we are always exploring those actions. But yeah, that is the carbon savings are for the overall targets mentioned.
Andrew, just maybe to clarify, Moses, so if I'm hopefully correct, that saving would be a kind of in-year if we got to 30% mileage share, so sort of almost taking a 2030 snapshot, rather than, so it's kind of an annual saving,
it's an
not
annual
a kind of
saving,
cumulative saving.
Yeah, all the savings in the plan are on a per year basis.
So they are annual savings. Okay. So this, take for it, the 73708 has a green RAG rating, and you say we are at 4.3%, and we are aspiring for 30%. How does that become green?
So yeah, that is
Which
obviously.
page is that?
It's page 6 of the report. I think it's page 20. Maybe it's the
page 6.
agenda.
Yes. Okay.
So it's for the so that is quite a more of a gap than potentially some of the other areas. So I understand the question on that, but based on, that's obviously in discussions. It's based on the fact we have that EV strategy in place, and based on kind of the confidence of the external consultant used, and our own discussions that and kind of the national priorities around encouraging that, and kind of it is a bit more of a kind of early adoption curve, so it's expected to increase rapidly. So based on those statistics, we have assigned it green. Obviously, if in the next year or two those aren't reflected, then we will update that to potentially amber if it needs it.
Sorry, Chair. Maybe I need to. Sounds a bit weird to me if you are If you're aspiring for 30% and you're 4.3, I would probably say that is an unbad.
So I think, Moses, it's the difference between looking at where we are now and, if our target was 30% in 2025, it would probably be a red, right? Because there's a huge gap. But I think, the difference is, as Andrew says, it's with the rate of adoption of electric vehicles that is forecast, this isn't just us forecasting it, it's, consultancies, it's others looking at a national picture, is expecting this very rapid ramp up. So I think by putting it as green, we're saying, yes, there's a long way to go, but all the the council has done what we plan to do in terms of delivering these strategies, and we're delivering on the actions. And two, the indications are that where we are today, we are looking like we would hit that 30% in 2030. So as Andrew says, each year as we get closer, we'll get a better idea of whether or not that is on track or not. But we are seeing, across the country, a huge acceleration in uptake of electric vehicles. So currently the 30% is, still seems realistic.
And actually, just for that action, I think it's within the EV strategy, there is a graph that shows where we need to be. So what percentage we need to be annually to meet that 2030 target. So we will look at that annually. And if we aren't far off it this year, but if there is the gap, if we look at the actual data against the projected data within that strategy, we can re-look at that RAG figure. So actually for that action, we should be able to quite accurately RAG that.
I think the problem is that we have to remember that this is 2030. It's not like the key performance indicators where we're comparing what the target was and where we got to. It's in the future. The target is in the future. So does that help?
I thought we spent the last 1 year trying to have something that reflects where we currently are, not aspirational. Maybe if Adrian was still here, probably. But it seems to me that this green is aspirational. It's not actual where we are at the moment.
Yes, it's aspirational, 2030. Yeah.
Well, I think it's reflecting that we have this target, and we are currently have done the actions, we are on track. So, there is, obviously we can't, and the underlying strategy of the EV strategy is where we can see that kind of more detailed breakdown of where we should be every year. And we're saying, look, we're on track, and we'll keep that under review as we get closer.
Okay.
Well, that's fine, Chair. Hopefully I will still be here next year.
I think the way it's presented is better than the way it used to be presented. Yeah. Okay, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to say, it does look really well presented, and it's a lot clearer to read. The one thing I would say on that is, because we've got a current figure and not a direction of travel, I think that makes it a little bit harder to understand as a numbers person from my point of view. If you said it's at 4.3 and it's up 1.5 from last year, you've got a clear sense of direction of travel. So, that would be the one suggestion from me moving forward. I'd say the rest of it's beautiful and clear. It's just that, how are the numbers changing would be the question I was asking, which I wouldn't expect you to know tonight.
Thank you, and I think that's it. It's trying to get the balance of providing enough information to give an indication of where we're at, but without providing too much information that it's not engaging and people don't understand. So it's that constant balance we try and get right with the CAP.
Caroline.
Thank you. Just a couple of more questions. I understand on charging points that people have their own charging for cars. They can rent it out. So is that ever added into the equation of charging points in the borough? We can't do it with ours.
Do you want me to take that, Mary? Sorry, go ahead. So there is a kind of a power point or charge point sharing schemes that are around. They're all web-based, so you can go online and find them. And I think they're even shown on ZapMap, if you're familiar with electric vehicle kind of websites, Zap Map is the main place to go to see where charge points are available. So you can see where other people are renting out their charge points. We're not personally counting those in terms of that number of charge points that we've got, but it is obviously, or hopefully, contributing towards the number of people who are actually switching to EV because they know that they've got somewhere else that they can charge. So it will be helping that top line figure, but it won't be affecting our actual delivery of number of charge points, which is that 1.2, isn't it? 1A.1.2.
Thank you. The second question I had was on page 27, the supporter cargo bikes. I see you've got some out. Has many people hired them, or how's the scheme going? Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so far it's been going quite slowly. We had a very good response initially. Shinfield Borough Council used one for quite a long period, and they're actually asking if they can borrow one again in the next few months, which is promising from that point of view. A lot of our local businesses, especially around Wokingham town centre, expressed interest, but they have some concerns over just where they're going to store the cargo bikes when they're loaned out, and some of the practicalities. So we're trying to help them work through that. One of the things we're doing, which you'll see on the table on here tomorrow, we've got an electric vehicle event for businesses, and we're taking the cargo bikes there as well. So we'll be displaying those and sharing those with businesses that come along to try electric vehicles. They can also have a look at the electric cargo bikes and have a go. I think once they realise how easy they are to use and how much they can actually carry, they can actually be a replacement for a van on a lot of small trips. But it's just getting that kind of gradual increase is the difficult part. Once we get a few people started, I think everyone will start using them. But yeah, it's just getting that initial uptake is where we're struggling a little bit.
Thank you.
Any help gratefully received.
Okay, can we go on to the next section, renewable energy generation? Any questions about this? Peter?
Just more an observation. We had a presentation by the Reading Community Energy Charity Trust, whatever they are, which I think the committee felt was very positive, and we were encouraging the council to work with them. It would have been nice to see perhaps them mentioned. So it was on page 31 that I kind of thought that, you know, are we working with them, or are we going to do something similar ourselves?
Yeah, so just on that, it references the feasibility assessment. So that is Reading Community Energy Society are looking, we're in discussions with them at the moment, and so we've provided some data, and they're looking at one of our sheltered housing schemes to review costs. We've done a bit of a cost benefit analysis, so that's in process. So in progress. So they're not mentioned, but that feasibility assessment includes them. We've also spoken to another community energy scheme, as the advice that Tony gave was to kind of get different quotes. Don't just get ours. So we're going to, once we get the Reading Community Energy Society information back, we're going to look at the data we've got, and also look at a kind of an option of do nothing, option of going with the two. And then hopefully that will unlock other buildings across our estate. But I think really we wanted to get that one pilot and that report complete, so we could share that with internal colleagues to kind of help them understand what, you know, the potential benefits.
I attended the Community Energy England summer conference a week or so ago, and it was great to, I think, kind of get some of those learnings from, some community energy groups have been around a very long time, others are very new, and it was actually a fantastic way to link up with people around, in other areas and hear about what's going well, what are the challenges, but a consistent theme was a strong partnership with your local authority is very powerful, because a lot of these projects are on a lot leisure centre roofs, libraries, schools are a huge one. So I think it I think the team working on a specific example will really help all of us to understand the value add. But yeah, it's definitely a priority for this coming year to work out what does it mean for Wokingham and where can we partner with community energy groups. And there are some changes being considered in national policy around, I think particularly coming from solar farms. So, there's a consultation open at the moment, for instance, saying, well, if there's a utility scale renewable power, then should there be a required percentage share for local groups such as community energy groups? So we'll have to see how that goes, but I think it's an interesting indication of how as part of the Clean Energy 2030 target, that role for local based groups is being very seriously considered. So yeah, we absolutely want to be aligned and supporting that where we can.
I was just wondering how the Mere Oak Park and Ride generation scheme was getting on. Because it's close to my home, if not my heart.
Yeah, so we're just in completing our feasibility and initial design work on that. So this is to put canopies over the parking spaces in the Park and Ride. Anticipate that we would then be able to utilise the energy generated to feed the charging points as well for vehicles parked there. So we are due to undertake some public consultation and then expect the planning application to come in at the end of this year. And we are looking to, with our connection date, complete those works for spring 27. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on generation? I've got lost now, so I've skipped ahead. Okay, so what's next? Retrofitting domestic and commercial buildings. Oh, this was what the question was about. I'll just point out a little nit, which is that on page 36, there's one that says current status completed, but then it says in the final column, initiation.
Good spot. We'll update that.
Okay, nothing else on this? Oh, Caroline.
Sorry, I was just reading the bottom one about rental accommodation. What's the EcoFlex scheme? To improve EPC on private rental properties. I just wondered what that scheme was all about.
Yeah, I think this scheme, we don't have the officer on the call, so we can take it away. But I think generally it's the supplier would provide funding, so they residents would go directly to their supplier to get the retrofit works. But I'll take it away to get a more thorough answer on that one.
Thank you.
Peter. Thanks, Peter. Caroline.
Sorry, it's just the first point. We're doing great at planting trees. So when we get to 50 hectares, do we plan to continue and try and find more land, or just keep planting? Thank you.
Shall I take that one, Maury?
Yes, please.
So I think if you remember, the council has a target to plant trees of 170 hectares. And the last time we were here, we had to acknowledge that the council, when it set that target for 170 hectares, didn't set a time limit for that. So there wasn't an end date to that particular target. And what we decided was we would come back to you with a target that was in the time frame of the CAP itself for planting trees that will contribute to our overall plan to plant that larger number. So yes, the answer is yes, we will keep going once we hit that target.
Waste and recycling. I don't think there's an awful lot to read here, and I expect not all of us have read every word.
I think just something to highlight here is the success of, or what we're seeing through the data now is that the shift in the alternate weekly collections is really delivering many of the the carbon reduction savings in particular. Obviously, that's the focus for tonight that were anticipated. So I think that was a very major service change implemented last year. So credit to the team. I think it came off fairly smoothly, and it's great to see the results are positive as was predicted.
Great, thank you. Okay, new development. Nobody got anything to say about that? Everybody's looking at it. Chris?
So I was going to say this section looks like it's got a fair amount of amber in it. Where do we feel we're at with this, and how have we got strategies to bridge that gap to get them back onto green? Where do we feel that we are as a group on this?
So the reason these ones are at amber is because it's reliant on the adoption of the LPU. So until we felt that that's we couldn't have it as green because we don't know. So I think once that once hopefully it gets adopted, then it would be we can change it to green.
James on that.
Yeah, if it's helpful, so I could just provide a bit of an update of where we've got to with the local plan update. So the LPU, so we've submitted that to government back in February. We've now had initial questions from the two appointed inspectors in April, which we've replied to. So had a series of about 40 questions initially on kind of initial observations on the plan. So none of those were on our kind of net zero climate change approach, which was, I guess in one sense, we can read into that as quite encouraging. So we're still awaiting confirmation from the inspectors on when hearing dates might be. So that's not likely to be before, well, it won't be before the autumn now. So we're still trying to seek some clarity from the planning inspector on what that means really, in terms of is that September or is that sort of slightly later in the year. But in effect, we're sort of on track to where we thought we might be. And the unknown here is kind of the policy approach that we're proposing is, we think, quite ambitious and sort of cutting edge in terms of best practice. But it's kind of, some of what we're proposing is contrary to what government expects from us at the moment. So the sort of unknown is to what level that will be challenged by the inspectors through the examination process. So we've clearly got a lot of evidence behind that, and we'll be we'll be pushing that and trying to justify our approach as strongly as possible. But it's a slight unknown that's out of our hands. So I think until we have a bit more clarity in terms of the hearing sessions and the questions that inspectors are asking, then Amber, I think, is a fair reflection at this stage, given where we are.
And in terms of, do we feel comfortable with it? I think one of the things I'd look at is, as I mentioned, the council climate scorecards release, the planning section we scored very, very highly on. And that, of course, is based on the local plan update that we very much hope the climate aspects will be approved by the planning inspectorate. But I think that gives us, I haven't got that section comparable, but the score on that was 87%, which, given that I think the averages overall in the country was 41% across all sections, is a very strong signal that the planning, once the local plan update is adopted, we're in a really good place on that.
Oh. I think the next one is... Oh, sorry, Moses.
So I'm just curious. On page 50, it says the local plan update will establish a spatial strategy which secures a pattern of development which allows for more people to live and work, where journeys can be undertaken by walking, cycling, and public transport. Just out of curiosity, what percentage of Wokingham residents live and work here that will have an impact on the savings? I'm saying if I work in London, for example, so the LPU will not stop me traveling to London. So I'm just saying, what is like rough percentage of how many residents live and work in Wokingham Borough?
I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know if anyone on the call does, but I have a feeling our economic development team might have stats on that. So that's something I can take away and see if they have that figure.
But as you pulled out, Moses, this does also include, ensuring people can get to work, walking, cycling, and public transport. I mean, the train, the vast number of people. I do live a mile from Twyford Station. There was a reason for that. I was going to work on the train, and so I guess that's where ensuring that we do have these public transport hubs as well that can allow new residents to access areas of employment. Yes, it'd be great if that's in the borough, but if it's not, that we have that kind of connection across I guess two centres of employment.
Just to add, we certainly from Wokingham Without have a lot of people that would cycle and walk. They can't now because of the SDR road going through, so the cycleways and footpaths have been closed, which is causing enormous problems for people that were trying to use and are trying to use bicycles and foot. If they could get there within a mile, and it's a 5-mile detour. So they're now forced, and there's nothing put in place. Not one of those footpaths have been given an alternative crossing, and they could easily have a crossing across there to well, not easily, but fairly cheaply.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't. No, obviously, it's not.
So it is a problem, and they are used, and it's a big deterrent.
Yeah, but and obviously there is disruption whenever any major infrastructure is being built, and I think there is short-term disruption that is caused, which the teams are trying to mitigate as much as possible. I think what the CAP and the planning section in particular is confirming and reinforcing the aspiration that we are committed to enabling active travel, and where we can, and it's about that design stage. And yes, the disruption is very unfortunate, and I'm sure every effort's been.
People want to use it; they are wanting to.
And that would be excellent. I hope once it's open that there's continued ability for people to do so. I'm sure they will.
Caroline. Thank you. It's probably just a bit of clarification on action completed to do with building regs and new homes, you talk about EV chargings for individual homes, and then it goes on to say for parking spaces for 10 or more, you will provide gully spaces. Okay. So who will pay for the installation of the charging at points in the future? If the developer doesn't do it at the time.
What page are we on?
I'm on page 51, sorry. It's to do with new homes, 6.2.5. Cable runs must be provided for every space without an EV charging point. I just wondered in the future, how do they get their charging provided if it's not done by the developer at the time?
Yeah, I think it is the developer, but I don't know whether, James could confirm on that. So that's 6.2.5 or Una, on the charge points.
I can speak to how this is currently happening because this is something that comes across my consultation area. The majority of cases, the developer is providing the cable runs even on the spaces where they're not currently providing the charge points. So we're seeing an increasing amount of charge points higher than the minimum level of provision required at the moment. And then they're sort of future-proofed, usually with additional cable runs on our major development sites, particularly underneath the remaining spaces.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just to add, so this is in relation to, as you say, new development, so where developers will be building the roads, etc., that serve the development themselves. So the expectation is that developers will provide that in the future, and then if there are instances where those aren't provided, I guess that then comes down to what are the fundings available for the council. But from the first protocol is that needs to be provided upfront by the developers, and their developers, to an extent, in our view, are sort of incentivised to do that because people expect to have that in their homes moving forward. So that would very much be the expectation.
Thank you.
Okay, procurement, section 7. This was one of the last things we talked about in a previous meeting, wasn't it? Chris.
Again, I think the same question as before. We've got some ambers on there. What's making them amber, and how confident are we can overcome that?
Are you okay if I come in and answer that question?
Yeah.
The reason why most of those are currently on amber is we've paused on some of our work around developing a new procurement strategy and social value policy, just to give us opportunity to embed the provisions in the Procurement Act. So we want to make sure that the new strategy aligns with the council's ambitions, but also aligns with the provisions in the Procurement Act and the what is outlined in the National Procurement Policy Statement. So that is the main reason why some of those are amber. In addition, we did report back to the last committee in May around the implementation of sustainability considerations within our procurement processes. And we want to continue the good work in that area and make sure that we collect even more data associated with sustainability in order to inform our future plans. Thank you.
That's great, thank you.
Caroline.
It's not so much a question, but more a statement that thank you for the Forest of Imagination. I thought it was brilliant, and I hope we are going to take this forward. Thank you. Sorry, I do apologise.
Yeah.
So with regards to the Forest Imagination project,
Yes, sorry, I went too ahead. Sorry.
yeah, I mean, that was actually a project that my team was involved in. So we offered some support and some project management to the implementation of that project. And I know that we're very, very keen to make sure that a lot of the installations that we had within that project remain at Dinton for quite some time, so we can continue to enjoy it in the longer term.
Thank you.
Well, I think we can go on to engagement and behaviour change. Yeah? It still says that the Forest of the Imagination project will be fully delivered in May.
Yeah, just the reason for that. So this plan should reflect the period April to March, but obviously some where there's significant updates, it feel like we should, because we're in this plan quite a bit with updates. Some sound like they're in the past, and some might be live. It's just difficult given the governance period and the period of the plan, which is why yes, some sound like they haven't happened yet, but they have.
Oh, sorry, Moses.
I'm on page 58. I'm just looking at these initiatives. I'm a member of this committee, and I don't seem to know that this thing exists. So how do ordinary residents know that these initiatives exist?
Which initiative is that? A specific one, or just generally?
The new climate emergency hub, the newsletter. I don't know they exist.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be privileged information, should it?
So it's a real challenge to get the message out to all residents and to all community groups. We try and promote the newsletter and the hub in any way we can. So we work closely with our communication colleagues and use some of the existing newsletters, and we look at our social media channels to kind of get the message out. But it's when we go to events, we talk about the hub, we talk about our newsletter. We have recently, there's been there was a climate emergency newsletter. That's now the environment newsletter, and it's used one of the old newsletters that existed, which has a lot more subscribers. So we hope now that climate emergency is part of the environment newsletter, we will reach more people. But it's a constant challenge to try and get the message out and get it to people. So, but we try and use any route we can.
I think also, as we discussed in the previous meeting of this committee, a lot of the engagement actions have been very schools-based in the past, and I think that's going to slightly transition over time. But the fact that I might be biased because environment and climate emergency is my my topic area, so I'm fully on board with combining the newsletters as part of that simplification, and the fact that we can reach more people is a bonus. But obviously, there's lots of different information across all the areas there. But any suggestions in terms of as ward members, any groups that you think we could, we'll have to, perhaps Neil, we could, and Mary, we could ensure the link is prominent in going out to this committee, and any suggestions on how we can better use other channels, then always gratefully received.
Well, parish council newsletters, I don't know whether you can sort of hitch a ride on those. Yes, Chris.
More of an observation than a question. It's good to see that there's the opportunities for the young people in the schools section, because I know from schools that young people are very, very interested in climate, and the fact that the Forest of Imagination engaged with all of those schools and gave them opportunities to get out and looked at it, I think is something really worth celebrating, because we've got a whole generation of people coming through that are much, much more sort of aware and switched on to that. So I think that's, one of a real positive to take away from this.
Yeah, and I hear from quite a lot of people that, you know, they've made changes in their home because their kids have nagged them about it. So, yeah, I think, you know, it's great that, you know, obviously there's multiple actors there, whether it's Department for Education, you know, the teachers themselves. But yeah, there's a huge amount of engagement from young people, and that's absolutely something that Resh and the team have been supporting over the last year.
Yeah, and just on that, I think the Climate Ambassador Scheme, Resh, who leads on the engagement work in the climate team, she works very closely with the Climate Ambassador rep at the University of Reading. It's a really good example of that partnership working, because we have delivered climate action plan workshops to 2 multi-academy trusts in the borough. What's really interesting is the difference in what the different trusts want. So one was a lot more focused on the kind of engagement side, and one was a lot more focused on the energy efficiency side. So just highlighting like the importance of getting the feedback from whether it's schools or whether it's community groups, because, you know, different groups will want a focus in different areas. But kind of what Katrin said around the nagging, I think we recognise that working with schools is not just about speaking to children, it's about speaking to their wider families, the parents, the guardians. So yeah, it is a really important focus for the engagement work we do in climate.
I didn't quite know where school transport fitted, but it's a council's school transport, I'm thinking. What about the, you know, requirements for taxi drivers and so on?
So yeah, that's currently not included within the plan, because the car fleet that we have there, I don't think it includes school vehicles.
No, it doesn't.
Because school vehicles will be a lot higher.
No, it doesn't. They have their own vehicles.
Yeah.
But I just wondered whether you had actually reached out into that sphere of requirement, because we do have requirements on them.
Potentially, yeah, with that we might pick it up in the procurement process. But we can.
Or licensing.
Yeah, something we can take away and see if there's an opportunity there.
Can I just come in on that one? Sorry, Mary. I don't know if you were here when that was looked at a little bit. So there was a taxi policy. I think it was a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. So we did look at it a little bit then, but that was before the current procurement kind of processes are in place. So obviously we will look at that again to see if there is more we can do in terms of school transport as well. We did support the transport team with regard to like the buses used and improving the sustainability and kind of the routes optimization that they did. But again, that's kind of a continual process of improvement, and it's always changing. And obviously they do use kind of the taxis kind of stuff for that. So yeah, it's something we're kind of continually exploring.
Thank you. Caroline.
Sorry. Page 64, you've got council car fleet switch to electric by the year 2028. Is that, I know it's an amber, is it likely to be taken a bit longer, or will they be all leased and replaced by 2028? Because that's how I read it.
Yeah, so the challenge with that action is we don't want to purchase new vehicles until we need to. So that's why, yeah, it's a difficult one. So whether we meet that target, I'm not sure we will, because we don't want to be pushing for unnecessary purchases when we don't need to. And from a carbon perspective, it's best to kind of get the most use out of a vehicle before purchasing electric. So, yeah, so that is why it's amber, given that challenge.
Yeah, we have had some, just to add to that a little bit, we have had some success in that recently, and a number of new vehicles recently have been electric vehicles. So it definitely seems like we are going in that direction. But as we said, those have to be replaced once they We're only replacing them once they reach the end of life, but we are there to support the teams in making that decision.
Thank you.
Peter? Moses?
Since Peter is ahead of us. Yeah, yes, I asked this question at a previous meeting about this pervious housing scheme which the council has adopted. And I was wondering why it's not recommended for new developments. Is that a bit of a conflict between local policy and national policy?
So are you looking specifically, is it 9.3.3, the Gorse Ride?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't know, Sarah, if you...
Yeah, so when we started the design work on the Gorse Ride Regeneration Scheme, which was back in 2015-16 probably, we, when our own policies and building regulations, etc., were not quite as developed as they are now, we utilised the principles of the passive house design principles, which were quite prolific at the time and sort of seen as the sort of leading to input into the design for the Gorse Ride properties. So as I said, that design for them was fixed about 2017, 2018 as we went through planning. And then it's utilising those principles of that, but as the policy has progressed, any more design changes or any more development we do for those houses and for others going forward will now be in line with current building regs and future building regs and the emerging policies out of the local plan. So back in the time when we were doing the initial design work, we used passive house, and now we have our own much more developed and more ambitious policies, I would suggest as well. That's where we were on the Gorse Ride one.
But presumably you're still using some passive house principles.
Absolutely, and there's a variety of different technologies, etc., down at Gorse Ride as well, and we're working with the residents who are moving into those properties as well. As well as the bricks and mortar and the putting in the infrastructure, there's also an education piece as well about how they utilise that technology and get the benefits that technology will bring them as residents as well.
Okay, we're going on to... Oh.
Not quickly, sorry. In terms of the LPU actually takes forward the space heating demand requirement of passive house design principles. So if we are able to adopt the policies as we hope we will be, as we've drafted them, and the planning inspector agrees that they're sound, then that will be a much wider standard that will apply across the borough, not just to our own development. Our own development will follow that standard, but it will have a greater impact because it will affect all new buildings in the borough.
Council emissions? Oh, you were going to say something about that, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. It's a subject I raised last year, so I'm going to go back to it this year. Waste and the council's recycling rate. So we're encouraging, or we're looking to get residents to hit 70% recycling rate. And we're not getting anywhere near that. So I asked last year if we can try and make some progress. So this year, it's 25 tonnes of waste and recycling rate is 32%. Last year, we produced 21 tonnes of waste at a 33% recycling rate. So we're producing more waste at a lower recycling rate. I look back at previous years and the rates were 20%, 24%. But the measurements were different, which surprised me and worried me, because the last 2 years it's shoot end only waste, whereas previous years it's been all council waste. So we seem to be moving the goalposts, and even by narrowing the goalposts, we haven't made progress. I think, the council should be, and I said this, I'll pull out my speech from last year, the council should be setting an example to our residents that 70% is achievable, and we as a borough, as an authority, are doing that. The climate emergency team are being let down by the rest of the council by not helping us meet those targets. So I guess a few questions is, why has no progress been made, and why have we moved the goalpost? So I suspect we're only measuring shoot end because if we measured all council waste, it would still be well below 30%. So a couple of questions there.
I'll just go in quickly on the data side. In terms of the difference, is as we say, it's the data we have available. So we're in contact with the teams, and it's quite difficult to get the data for all of the sites, all council sites waste. That depends on the kind of the contracts and all that kind of stuff. Reporting back that data on a regular basis. So for the data we've got available, it's only been available for shoot end for the past 2 years. We are looking to kind of improve that and go back towards all councils' sites if we can, because as you say, that is the aim, to do it at that kind of ambitious level. It is obviously a consideration that we have mentioned previously in terms of those kind of cases. For example, if it was a case of Dinton or somewhere like that, where residents are attending those kind of what classes council owned properties, while we can provide the options, it's up to the residents to kind of to support that as well. So it's not, there's a bit of a grey area in between obviously council owned sites like our own shoot end offices and those wider sites and things like leisure centres. So as while we're exploring that, there might be a little bit of differentiation.
Right, and can I come in on the waste side of things? So the type of waste that's deposited in shoot end is very different to the type of waste that's deposited from a residential house. So 35% of our overall waste, recyclable waste, is garden waste and food waste, and that's people preparing their food. Unfortunately, the food waste that comes out of shoot end is leftover bits of sandwiches and tea bags and things like that. So it doesn't make up that large amount of waste that we see generally. Also, the DMR, so recyclables, because there's extended producer responsibility, so manufacturers are responsible for the packaging they produce now and taxed by it. The packaging is now lighter, so we're seeing all recyclables, all packaging, glass, card, plastic bottles are all a lot lighter than they were previously. So nationally we are seeing a change in recycling. So that's why it's very different at shoot end than it would be from our regular residential target.
Just on a practical level, in this building there are no recycling bins. We've got a refuse bin. Where I work, we have green recycling bins, we have general waste, and we have food recycling caddies in the kitchens. I don't see this here. So it's quite a simple thing to be able to do in shoot end. To be able to do more recycling, we should be able to separate our own waste. Unless you have people separating waste in the back office, which I doubt it, then we need better management of waste within our own buildings.
Do you want me to come in on that one? Sorry, just because facilities management at shoot end sits under my area. I didn't think I was going to be answering a question on that today, but I will. So we do have in all areas where where staff are, definitely we have separate in all of the kitchens, dry recycling, general waste and food caddies that are emptied, which our cleaning staff do. I accept the example we conceived right here. There's a general waste bin in here and not a recycling one. So there is a scheme and the mechanism and the infrastructure in the building to recycle and to recycle food waste. I suspect we need to make sure and do that audit and make sure that they're all available in the right places. So I can take an action back to just check that on a very practical basis. But I think what we need to do is work with our colleagues at Mari and her team around the promotion to staff of that. Staff and visitors and councillors, anybody who's in this building, that those facilities are available and that there's a responsibility on them to do that. But certainly the infrastructure is there, but I will take the action to make sure that it's acceptable around.
And just to add on the kind of engagement side of things, because Peter, I do remember you brought this up last year and it was a really valid point. So we spoke to our Net Zero Heroes, which is a group within the council of staff that are interested in sustainability, and we worked together, and there were posters developed, and there was some communication that went out in our big chat trying to encourage recycling among staff. but there's, you know, there's more we need to do, and I think we'll kind of continue to work together with facilities, with waste, with climate and the Net Zero Heroes group to explore what other things we can do to kind of get that figure up.
Okay, have we got any more comments on some nice I think we've got to the appendices, haven't we? Oh, well, there's the strategy, which used to be at the beginning. Is that sort of moved from, you've abstracted out the strategy, haven't you?
Yes, so they are two separate documents now.
And these priority areas and carbon savings, which I assume is annual.
Sorry, where's that?
Page 75.
So, I mean, this is really a kind of headline. So these numbers are the numbers we've just been going through in the action plan in much more detail, but just to draw out, so as you can see, these are the high level actions rather than those sort of sub ones, but to, give a relatively, how many, it doesn't run to too many pages, 11-page option to kind of see where the kind of the core focus areas are and the relative sort of emission savings that are targeted there.
The executive summary. And then, well, there's an appendix on all the literature, the legislation and stuff. And then appendix 2, carbon footprint data, which again, I assume is this year, or not this year. Which year is it? It must be a year.
Yeah, so is on the following page 17 of the strategy. So the DESNES data is from 2021 and the scatter data is from 2019 because those were the most recent available at the time.
And this is a big challenge, I think, particularly given we're only 5 years out from 2030. It's always going to be a balance of, this data is very well constructed and, I think we can have reasonable certainty it's got fairly high accuracy, but it's really delayed. So seeing the feed through of these actions is a difficult in this data, but that's where, the team are looking at some of the other, within those priority action areas, what are, the other indicators that we can use to keep a closer eye on how on track are we.
So were we to meet the target, we wouldn't know about it until 5 years later. Moses?
Chair, I'm looking at page 83. What are these negative numbers of CO2 equivalent?
Which page, sorry, Moses?
Page 83.
Yes. It's carbon sequestration, I would have thought.
Yeah, Andrew's on, so.
Yeah, sorry, there's different page numbers for the agenda and the strategy that I'm looking at. Is this the minus 10.9 for the carbon sequestration near in the charts? Is that what we're referring to? Because that is carbon sequestration figures. So obviously, tree planting over the period that is effectively taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere.
But not just the planting. I mean that's the scatter ones. So all of the relatively mature forests or grasslands and so on can also act as carbon sinks. So that's sort of the overall impact from land use.
Well, I must say I haven't got any more comments on this document. So I think, somebody, yeah. Okay, shall we stop there then? Well, thank you very much to everyone for all their illuminating answers, and it was great, very interesting discussion. Right. Okay, the work programme. So basically the plan is to go back to doing deep dives into various areas and have some presentations from experts, which we haven't actually scheduled any experts yet. So if anyone's got any ideas, I think having the university people back was one idea, wasn't it? So, page 118, 11th of November. We'll have a Barkham Solar Farm update then. Page 119. Page 120. Obviously, if anyone has any ideas for things we ought to be looking at, then we can factor them in. Okay, action tracker, page 121. And page 122. Okay. Right, well, thank you very much. And again, thanks to the officers and Catherine for all their hard work on this.